How many of you out there would really love an extra 20 yards off the tee? I'm sure a lot of you pay a lot of money to be able to hit that driver 20, 30 yards further down the fairway and give yourself a 9-iron in instead of a 5-iron. Now, there are two things really that we can do to encourage the correct launch conditions with the ball, which really ultimately lead to longer distance. And they are creating a bit more club head speed and creating the correct approach or swing path into the golf ball. Now, most golfers are focused in the wrong dimension, and what I mean by that is that they're trying to focus on the dimension of height in their backswing, trying to get the club high above them to create this big high arc that they see with players like Dustin Johnson and Phil Mickelson, etc. Now, these highly adapted athletes might be able to do that, but the average golfer would be much better off focusing on the dimension of depth. And what I mean by that is taking the right shoulder, the right hip and the hands in from the golf ball. If we use the analogy of a baseball player, he waggles a bat, we have the strike zone here, he withdraws and takes the tip of the bat in behind him, and then he rotates out and the bat goes a long way in front of him to reach the baseball. Now, as he takes that bat a long way behind him, he's creating a lot of angular speed and velocity as the club comes back around him there. And the same applies to golf. We're just operating on a different plane. You know, baseball swings more of a horizontal plane. Golf swing is on a more of a pitched incline plane. Okay, so making sure that we get the correct depth in the swing really helps. Now, there can be a couple of things in the setup which really limit the ability to create that depth and that rotation in the backswing. See a lot of players with this right foot squared away too much. Okay, now when you square away your right foot, it really inhibits the ability to turn into that right hip joint. Okay, so if we can't turn very well into that right hip joint, then we are going to recruit a different part of our body, usually the lumbar spine, and then it creates that sort of pelvic sway there. And that's a very sort of common look that you see with golfers on a Saturday, right? And it's because of the inhibited in the right hip joint. So I would really encourage people to turn the right foot outwards a good 20 degrees so you feel like your knee is in the same direction as your ankle. And what that will do is then you'll be able to rotate internally into that right hip and create a full hip turn. Because remember, a full hip turn helps create a full shoulder turn. The other little thing is obviously posture in your setup position. We don't want to have the posterior tilt of the pelvis here where the hips are going towards the ball and we've got the rounding of the shoulders, nor do we want to have too much anterior tilt where we tilt the backside out too much and it really sort of restricts and stiffens up the lower part of your spine there. So just trying to try and find a natural tilt through the spine there that will engage the core muscles but also enable you to rotate around your spine. Okay, so to try those two things, when I get the backswing and I rotate in behind me, you want to really feel like the right shoulder is just going back up that club. Now, if my right shoulder just pulls back and in up that club there, you can see my hands are sort of opposite my right shoulder, left arm's across on my shoulder plane there, okay? And that will allow the club to drop down into the correct slot much easily. Same thing with the right elbow. If we take our right elbow just up that inclined plane, we have enough depth in our swing, and it's a lot easier for us to just take the right elbow straight down the plane again. So I'm just going to set up over this yellow tee and try this here. I'm going to turn my right foot out, put the right foot back a little bit so it's a little bit in from the front foot, again helping the ability to turn internally into the right hip. And then I'm going to try and I'm just going to pull my right shoulder and right hip in from the ball and try and get my hands where I feel like they're opposite my right shoulder. And then from there, I'm really wound up. I've got a great coil good load into my right hip joint. So not only can I really unwind with power, but the club has gone deep enough that it will drop into the correct slot and it will swing up and out into the tee. And that will create proper launch angle, good swing direction for high, long launching drives. Try that little tip there. I'm sure it'll help. And let's add some distance to your drives.